Hello, creative spirits. It's been a little while. I've been meaning to record this microdose episode for you for more than a month, and I just couldn't do it until today for some reason. I think on a meta level, this episode is going to be about the Hermit. This is a follow up of sorts to the Hermit episode with Chad Hutchinson and the Wheel of Fortune episode with Ami Plassi. And I think I just needed to hermit on this episode for a while. I've been keeping notes, gathering things, waffling, flip flopping, juggling ideas, trying to figure out exactly what I want to say. And I do not have a crisp, sharp outline, but I think I have some things to share. So you may hear some pregnant pauses because these episodes are not edited if I get through this first take. And you may hear a dog or two as well. I'm also probably going to read to you a little bit, but let's get into it. So, I want to talk about the importance of solitude, of enacting a hermit like energy, a hermit like space for yourself as a way to both cultivate your relationship with creativity and also to help you weather life, to move through life in a way that feels intentional and grounded in you and who you are and who you want to be and what matters to you. So I think this is becoming more and more important as our lives increasingly become filled with more and more and more distractions and more things that demand our attention. If you were to compare us today to our ancestors who lived 100, 200, 400, 1,000 years ago, we have an overwhelming tsunami level amount of stuff coming at us all the time that, like, just so much external stimulation. We're on our phones when we're not on our computers for work, many of us. So we're on one screen, we're on one screen for a lot of the day where our attention shifts constantly between emails, 1,000 tabs in your browser, the other messaging software they use at work, some other thing you have to input information into. So just in that one screen, you're jumping around and jumping around all day. Maybe you're getting up to have conversations, you're hopping into meetings, you're hopping out. And then we have the phone right by the laptop, where inside that phone, we can also get emails. We can get all kinds of push notifications. Those little red circles with a number in them are meant to create a kind of addictive behavior for our attention. It absolutely works on me. I hate seeing those numbers get big. And I have friends who let those numbers get into the 3 digits and the 4 digits. And I simply cannot imagine going through life. Though I think it's great because it probably means they ignore a lot of stuff. But those little push notifications are meant to also bring us back and give our attention back to something external to us. And even within the phone, there's Instagram, there's the email, there's your WhatsApp, there's whatever games you play, et cetera, et cetera. And then outside of the screens, there's some more screens. We can stream virtually anything we want to watch on our televisions. And then within our homes, we have family members, we might have children, we might have pets, all kind of vying for our attention throughout the day. And then life just requires, modern life involves so much stuff, running a lot of different kinds of errands, having a lot of different kinds of bills to pay to different kinds of people, lots of passwords. We need a fucking password for everything. My spreadsheet of passwords is like 3 or 4 pages long now. I'm sure that's very normal for people. So there's just a lot. What I'm saying is that there's so much that we really, if we want to create solitude, if we want to have time to ourselves, if we want to create some space from all of the distractions in our lives, it takes a little bit of fighting for it. It takes intention and planning. It takes commitment. And I think it takes an awareness that it's just incredibly important. Everyone's going to be kind of different in their relationship to this idea or this capacity for being alone. I grew up an only child. My parents divorced when I was 3 or 4 years old. So my mom usually had another partner. She did have another partner while I was growing up. Um, but I was also a latchkey kid. So, I'd see my dad like every other weekend. And then it was a relatively quiet household for us. And I walked home from school and would have several hours to myself. And I didn't have siblings. I just talked to my cats. So I got really used to when I was younger being with myself and spending time with myself. But if you grew up with a lot of siblings, you might be one of those people who wanted to have a big family. It might feel really weird for you to be by yourself for an extended period of time. And that's okay. But I also think if you're one of those people, your challenge or your invitation is to practice or bring in a little bit more of that, even if you feel like you can't, even if it feels impossible. What would it look like to increase the amount of time you had with yourself? I'm also an introvert, which shouldn't surprise you for all the reasons I just described. But because I'm an introvert who can occasionally socialize effectively, um, what it feels like to me when I get to be alone is that I get to be in my own energy. And so even if you have a really wonderful set of people who live in your immediate surroundings, you're still in their energy a lot. Even if they're not creating friction, even if they're not making huge demands on you, your energy is commingled with theirs day in and day out. And that's okay. That's great. But what is it like to be in your own energy for an extended period of time? I like being in my own energy because I don't have to think about anyone else. My only responsibility is me. I don't have to listen to anyone else's music, or I don't have to hear the sounds that other people are making. I think this also comes from a little bit of neurodivergence, and you might be on that spectrum too. And if so, your capacity and your need for stimulation and different kinds of stimulation is going to be unique to you. So, of course, honor that. But when I get to be in my own energy, I just get more space. I get more time. I get to kind of create this bubble that isn't disrupted or punctured by what other people have going on. Not because what they're doing is messed up or problematic, but it's just there. So that's one idea I want to plant, being in your own energy. As I was thinking about making this episode and kind of waffling around and meandering through different ideas, what came to me in the last couple of days was this idea that it's really important because that space, that silence, that stillness that can come up when we are in solitude is the space in which divinity or creativity can reach us. So I'm not saying we can't have a spiritual experience if we were recently on our computer or immediately after looking at our phones or with other people around us. We absolutely can. But when we create more space around us, more silence, fewer distractions, creativity and spirituality or spirit is kind of looking at us, seeing like, oh, they're available. If I bring something forward, they're more likely to hear me because they're not binging Downton Abbey. They're not listening to this podcast. They're not distracted by all the cleaning they want to do in their house. So it's a signal. It's a way to kind of like open up the radar, open up the big satellite dish and see what wants to come. I'm putting creativity and spirituality in the same bucket here because I think of creativity as an energy that can come and find us and work with us. And obviously, you can be creative in a coffee shop where there's a lot of noise. I'm not saying this is the only, again, it's not the only time it can happen. But the more you create space for yourself and a little like bubble of receptivity and stillness, the more you get to practice and understand how spirit or how creativity will come to you. How will it show up to you? How will it communicate with you? What kinds of language does it use to talk to you? Is it like a voice in your mind? Is it image in front of you, inside of you? Is it serendipity? Is it an animal encounter? Obviously, there can be many ways. There's not just one mode. But the more we practice that, the more we kind of understand how the communication can work. It's like the more time you spend on your phone, the more you learn how the phone works and the different things you can do on your phone. And the same goes with the immaterial, the unseen realms. So I'll also say that when we create pockets of solitude, like I love my partner, we get along really great. But because I was an only child and I really love being in my own energy, sometimes if we've been in cohabitating like straight for weeks and weeks and weeks, I get kind of twitchy. Like I want some alone time. And then sometimes I get it. And that's great. And that means I can kind of like either veg out and sort of like watch all the annoying television that I want or play whatever music I want loudly throughout the house, those kinds of things. And that's wonderful to do. We all deserve that. But then there's also, so that looks like solitude, but we're also filling a lot of the solitude with some other stimulation or some other distraction, or we're like, if we're binge watching something, we're just sort of like taking a fire hose to our brain and like downloading all these stories of all these other characters that may be entertaining and interesting, but have nothing to do with us. So there's alone time where we can still be very distracted and very busy. And then there's a kind of alone time that has more quiet, more solitude. And the more we practice some of that, even for like small doses of time, if you're someone who really likes to be around people, that feels really comfortable to you, or you grow up in a kind of like noisy or boisterous household, it's going to feel weirder to be alone by yourself. So maybe you're looking to do that for 20 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour. You're not trying to take like a 14-day stay in a cabin silent meditation situation, right? That's going to be a little too jarring. But I'm inviting you to kind of play with both alone time and how within alone time you can create more silence, more stillness, more a sense that like not much is happening. Of course, that could include journaling, that could include doing ritual work, that could include walking around in nature. It might just include meditating, lying down, or doing some work, building something, creating something. So, with those distinctions made, I want to add that when we create that pocket or that space or that bubble where spirit can reach us, where creativity can reach us, that's when we get to understand more of our true nature, what matters to us, what we like, what we don't like, what our real tolerance is for certain things, and where we might be becoming intolerant of certain things that have been going on in our lives for a while. So that means that when the wheel of life is spinning and bringing us new stuff, difficult things, exciting things, new levels of success, we have this anchor, we have this frame of reference within ourselves for how we want to move through that. We're not always in a place of reaction. We have kind of a direction that we're trying to take, or a guidance system that we use independently of the circumstances. so that we're not constantly just kind of pinballing through our life in reaction to circumstances that come up. We're able to kind of look at the circumstance and even separate from it slightly because we've practiced this notion of separation. We've practiced a little bit of detachment from the hustle and bustle of everyday reality. And we can see that we're separate from our circumstances. We can see that the reality we're in is just one kind of reality. It's not the be all end all. It just happens to be the life we're in right now. But if we have more practice, stepping back, being silent, connecting with ourselves, feeling guided by spirit, using creative energy in a way that feels authentic for us, then when these circumstances come up, we have a greater sense of what we want to do and why we want to do it. And we don't just automatically respond to something based on old patterns. We get to choose. So that's my sell. I hate always selling. That's my pitch. That's my argument. That's what I want to invite you into. And then I also gathered some stories that I want to share. I'm going to start with a few quotes, actually. And this one is from Ranier Maria Rilke. Love your solitude and try to sing out with the pain it causes you. For those who are near you are far away. And this shows that the space around you is beginning to grow vast. Be happy about your growth, in which, of course, you can't take anyone with you, and be gentle with those who stay behind. So I love this quote, this idea of loving your solitude. And solitude can be painful. And I like how that's noted in this statement, sing out with the pain it causes you. It can be very difficult if we have experiences of abandonment or neglect or separation from beloved caregivers or beloved people. Then solitude can feel really painful. It can feel like a reenactment of that, which is why we want to move slowly. We want to increase our capacity slightly, little by little over time. What I also love about this quote is this acknowledgement that we're, in a way, alone in life the whole time. Not that we don't have people around us who care for us and love us, and not that we can get through life on our own. We can't. We need people. We are communal as a species. But we are the only person who is having the experience that we're having. We can learn how to communicate and express that experience. We can be vulnerable and share about what we're going through in our lives. But ultimately, the experience is ours. And even when we share it, it's being filtered through someone else's perception. So, we arrived here as like an alone little person. We were brought into someone's arms, but we were our own little being. And we've been kind of carrying that all the way through until we meet our death, which we will also go through alone. And that can seem incredibly depressing and scary. I think it's true on one level. And another truth is that we are always connected to something greater than us. We are not actually just like a singular person with an ego. I mean, we are a singular person with an ego, but we are also deeply connected to the earth, to spirit, if we want to be. Like, it's there, it's available to us. We just have to practice feeling connected to it. And through those connections, we also are connected to ancestors, to other people who share our space. So while we are singular, while we do have a solo path through life, that's not like the black and white of it all. I also love this quote, this part of this quote: be happy about your growth, in which, of course, you can't take anyone with you, and be gentle with those who stay behind. And I think that's important to note as we spend time with ourselves, as we marinate in our own energy more often, and we get a greater sense of where we want to go and why, or how we want to live and why, that might require some change. And not everyone in our lives is going to understand that. Not everyone around us is going to be changing in the same way or at the same pace. But when we get to spend this alone time with ourselves, we understand what's important. And we understand that it's important to keep growing regardless of what other people are doing. I'm going to share another quote from Rilke. Go into yourself. Find out the reason that commands you to write. See whether it has spread its roots into the very depths of your heart. Confess to yourself whether you would have to die if you were forbidden to write. This, most of all, ask yourself in the most silent hour of your night, must I write? Dig into yourself for a deep answer. And if this answer rings out in assent, if you meet this solemn question with a strong, simple, I must, then build your life in accordance with this necessity. Obviously, this quote is intended for writers or people who want to write or who are writing. But I think you could swap out writing with any other thing that you love or that feels important to you. What I love about this quote is that we get so many instructions, so many different forms of persuasion and coercion that tell us why things are important, what we should or should be doing, what matters and what doesn't matter. Most of those instructions or imperatives are related to capitalism, which is also problematic on multiple levels. It's not just about the economy, right? It's about liberation. It's about equality. Capitalism does not pass its benefits around equally, as we know very well, right? But in order to keep us compliant and participating and willingly participating in capitalism, we take in all of this other information about what matters, or if we're going to do something, it's only valuable if it looks like this. And so if you have an art form that you like to practice, you probably have the voice of capitalism in your mind somewhere that tells you that in order for you to do this thing, it's only worthwhile if it turns out to be like this, if it makes you money, if it gets you success, if it creates visibility for you. There's not any recognition or reward for doing something because you enjoy it, and that's it. And in this quote that I just shared, there's this space of solitude where you dialogue with yourself, or you dialogue with spirit, or you dialogue with the spirit of creativity. And you ask, why must I do this? Why am I doing this? Why does it matter? And then you get your own answer for that. And with that answer, you can move forward differently than you would if you were just using all of the external answers that were provided for you. The last thing I'm going to share is the story that I found in The Nautilus, which is a publication that takes a science approach to nature, has kind of like a science and a little bit of mystical approach to nature. And I'm on their email list, and they sent out, some of the stories they had. And one of them was called A Hermit's Reality, which of course I was interested in inherently, but also wanted to look at for the sake of this episode. So it tells the story of this man who became a Catholic priest. I believe he grew up in Europe. And it's funny because I copy pasted from the article when I was looking at it. And now my free, I can't look at the articles for free until like next month or something. So I can't tell you his full name, and I can't tell you where he's from. But I'm going to read you some of these paragraphs from the story, and I'll link you to the story in the show notes. He also has a YouTube channel where he chronicled his year living as a hermit in the French Alps. I'll link you to that too if you want to check out his work. Okay. So his last name is Schwartz. I believe his first name is Johannes. I'm going to start with a quote where Johannes Schwartz says, "Reality, if you seek it out, will have answers about who we are, how we are, and what we are called to be," wrote Schwartz from his desk, adorned with portraits of Catholic saints. On the mountain, so this man would eventually go to live in the French Alps, at least part-time in a year. He started to regularly live there for several seasons. So on the mountain, Schwartz lives what he calls, quote, a prayer life, by which he does not mean that he prays all the time. To Schwartz, prayer means, quote, raising your mind to God. So that comes back to this notion that when we create this space to commune with something divine, the divine can find us. It also means we like stop worshiping all these other little things that demand our attention throughout the day, the screens, the emails, the notifications, the stuff we need to buy, the errands we need to run. We kind of get down to something basic and create this space. So again, to Schwartz, prayer means, quote, raising your mind to God, gardening as prayer, lecture notes as prayer, meditation in the wooden chapel he built himself as prayer. Quote, if you want to be a proper hermit, you have to live in relationship to God. Otherwise, you just become another wild, bearded man who lives by himself in the forest. In 1998, while still a theology student, Schwartz walked more than 1,000 miles from Austria to the well-traveled Santiago de Compostela in Spain in a cloth robe without money or a backpack, relying on the kindness of strangers. While walking, Schwartz found his attachment to comfort slipping away. First came the physical pain as the body adjusted to day-long movement. Then, as the pain faded, the mind wandered, processing memories and new encounters, slipping in and out of rumination. But after a few weeks, quote, the rhythm of your steps will slowly clear your mind, wrote Schwartz. And I really love this part because I like how it kind of takes us through these layers of consciousness that he experienced as he separated from the busyness of the world, as he focused on something very simple, one foot in front of the other. And so he didn't even have like thoughts spinning through his head. He didn't have language and sentences like floating through his mind. There wasn't a lot of like mental chatter. There was just footstep after footstep. Eat, sleep, walk, repeat. He met people he would not have encountered otherwise and found them to be delightful. At some point, he stopped talking to himself. There was no internal voice or meta commentary. This new reality was reflective and calm, like drifting in a lake. Once you simply are, your hiking boots no longer matter, he wrote. You started a journey inward. What will you find? Or whom? Schwartz returned to school, but the altered state of pilgrimage stayed with him. He longed to undertake future and more ambitious walks. In 2013, Schwartz took leave from work and trekked 8,680 miles on foot from Liechtenstein to Jerusalem and made a documentary film about this journey to where God dwells. He was inspired to film his pilgrimage after viewing the film Into Great Silence, which captures the lives of the Carthusian monks at the Grande Chartreuse, a monastery in the French Alps. In the 1950s, the English writer and adventurer Patrick Leigh Fermor absconded from the city to overcome writer's block and stay in monasteries across Europe. In A Time to Keep Silence, a book of letters from his sojourn, Fermor wrote about the French abbey of Saint Wandrille, which allowed no speaking or smoking. Quote, the period during which normal standards recede and the strange new world becomes reality is slow and at first acutely painful, Fermor wrote. Yet after just a few days, he experienced a transformation in which his mind could focus on larger questions, while common emotions like fear and guilt dissipated. His work improved. Schwartz's transition into solitude was not painful like Firmer's. It was like a slow realization of cultivating something that had been inside him all along. He carried what he gathered from his experience as a pilgrim, physical labor, isolation, minimalism, and wilderness, onto the mountain. Quote, "It's in losing yourself that you become who you truly are," Schwartz said. So, yeah, I wanted to share his story. I noticed this pattern, that this idea that hermiting, creating a kind of hermit experience, is painful at first. It's not going to feel super comfortable. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel different. You might feel a little bit naked without all these distractions that fill up our lives. But I think it's worth doing. I think it's an incredibly powerful thing to be able to be with yourself. I think I also should note that, some of us out there are living alone and spending a lot of time alone, or feel like a full-time hermit. And so that's not the challenge for you. I mean, maybe the challenge is how you utilize your alone time, and how you kind of create some time that is rich with the quiet or solitude, or separate from the distractions. And also how you make sure that you have meaningful social interactions in your life. We absolutely need a balance. And of course, very few of us can run away to the Alps and live on a mountain. I think I would like to do that, but I don't know how to build from rocks and wood on the side of a mountain. I'm not that strong or talented, um, but it sounds pretty dreamy in a way, certainly on some days. So I hope these stories, I hope these quotes and thoughts give you something you can work with as you cultivate your own life and creativity. And coming very soon, very, very soon, it's ready to go, will be the episode on the Justice Card with Maria Minnis. It's going to be a great conversation. And then we'll keep sharing from there. So thank you for listening. There's a space at the top of the episode description, I think, where you can send me a text and tell me what you thought, or, tell me how this moved you, or tell me I'm full of shit, whatever. You can reach out. You can also reach me by email. You can head over to typewritertarot.com to find out more of what's going on over here, some of the other things I'm doing when I'm not recording episodes for you. So stay in touch and be a hermit sometimes too. All right. Take care. Enjoy your creative and magical life.